I welcome you to Everyday Esoteric, where angels are friends, not food. We are picking up where we left off with chicken Qabala. Let's get into it.
But
Anyway,
not going to get into our.
Do you have any commentary on?
On like the
before we
real
get
content
canceled?
and not the not just the Loch Ness thing. I mean, I don't think there's necessarily anything too profound that this is saying that we couldn't have already gotten from like all the other things. I don't want to say that like this is the cream that you rub on your neck after the whiplash of the first couple of commandments, but I'll say that like, yeah, this definitely doesn't like smack anyone in the face right after all the other stuff that he has you listen to.
It's I think he does a really good job at, like, through pattern and repetition, trying to explain it in subtly different ways just to get it to click is really what I think a lot of these command rants come down to.
Yeah, I mean, one of the criticisms I have, at least with this particular thing, and a lot of one of my criticisms generally with a lot of this is there's nothing, you can't prove things in this sense, but that's not to say that it is a detractant to any of this, just because it all still has, but we already talked about this, but it all still has that sort of like faith point that you start with, and then it all makes sense when you assume that first bit's true.
Right. So, yeah, and then that kind of sets you up for the everything in heaven and earth as a reflection of everything else in heaven and earth. So imagine for a moment, if you can, a piano. A piano has 88 keys, and those 88 keys are used to express 12 individual notes. An infinitely large piano may have infinite keys, but it can still only express those 12 notes that in higher or lower or in combination. It does not take long to notice then that there are patterns everywhere elsewhere in the world around you. For example, in the subatomic realm, electrons orbit the nucleus of an atom in the same way that moons orbit the planet. Planet will then orbit suns or stars. And it's not to say that the function of each of those things is the same, but the general isness is a reflection of other things.
I mean, I just think it's pretty cool in general. Like, I don't have anything like groundbreaking to say about this one, but I just do think it's very cool, especially if you've ever seen like the images of the atoms and the sort of the drawings of atoms orbiting, the molecule orbiting thing, and like how our solar system looks. And then if you want to look at like how the neurons in your brain look mapped out versus like what a nebula looks like, and how there's such a weird similarity between things that are happening at the infinitesimally small level versus what also seems to be happening on a cosmological scale. It's just a fun thing to think about.
And then like all the crazy places that the golden ratio will show up. And again, like I think a lot of this then comes with a presupposition of everything in the universe is expanding from a single point. And if that happened, there had to have been some release of energy at some point, and it's coalescing and cascading and fractalizing and bouncing off of itself in other things, and then that creates itself within other things, and so on and so forth, like ad nauseum. And then you get to see little hints of that are effectively synchronicities of one another. And then synchronicities, that's a whole other thing. When we get to Jung, we'll see that there are attempts to be made to explain similar phenomena within the psychology of a human. And then that that lands us nice and square into Command Rant 9, which is everything in heaven and earth contains the pattern of everything in heaven and earth. And this gets us to like the main paradox that I would love Alex to elucidate all of us on.
So the paradox, at least what I thought of as the paradox here, or this remind me of, had to do with Banach Tarski, which is a sort of weird phenomena that you can get, and is better. It's way better described by Vsauce on YouTube. But effectively, what it talks about is that when you think of an object, or you have an object such as a sphere, you can effectively break it down to the different parts of it. Like different, you can create infinitely many points on this object, and then you can break those infinitesimally, uh, those points into qualified points such as poles, and use that, the sum of its parts, and from those parts create exact copies of them by only using parts of the parts you use from the original object. Which is to say that, like, imagine you are able to extract the information of the chair from the chair, and that with the principle explained in Banach-Tarski, reproduce the information of the chair from only part of the information of the original chair, which is, I know, a dense idea to think about, but it is this idea that you can take a partial mapping of something and still be able to reproduce that something. And I kind of just now kind of wonder if it doesn't sort of apply to the entire philosophy of this, where if you only provided some of these command rants to someone, if they couldn't eventually extrapolate out a couple of the rest of them with just a few of these, and maybe all of, like, Kabbalistic philosophy. But
And and that's what I was going to get at is my perception so far into how Kabbalistic thought works. And to me, it would be crazy because I don't know when this paradox was established, but the Kabbalistic thought, if it does match up as well as I think it does, we're already talking about thousands of years almost that this thinking has been around to me, which is insane, or at least hundreds of years. Um, but I like to think of it as like a dictionary of letters,
yeah, the paradox was originally published in 1924 by Stefan Banach and Alfred Tarski.
which is that may kind of lend itself to how they came up with that because the late 1800s to the 19 or early 1900s, late 1800s, you had the big spiritualist movement, you had a big resurgence in the occult. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of this philosophy did spill over into mathematics at the time. Um, but still, that's just crazy to me. But I like to think of it as like a dictionary of letters rather than of words. But within that dictionary, A under A is every conceivable possible combination of A with the rest of the alphabet, and it goes through the alphabet like subsequently like that. But I think like if we follow the Kabbalistic logic and it matches with this logic, is that it doesn't matter if you look at A through Z, you will get information of A through Z, regardless of what entry point you choose into that dictionary, so to speak. But then the at least in the Vsauce video that I was watching to try to understand this, he had a pictorial of a sphere that then had poles. Can you describe that, Alex?
Yeah, so he does what I sort of mentioned, is that you put all of these, you put a bunch of points, you map every single possible point on the sphere, and then what you do is you also create a mapping of how to get to every one of the other points from some given point using a series of rotations of up, right, left, or down, and you create this sort of infinite dictionary of ways to get from one point to another. And then you create this sort of, like, that's the information lexicon that you get, is like, if you were to follow these instructions, you can go from any point on the sphere to any other point on the sphere with them. And then
Right.
he talks about something previous that helps lend to this, but then you also have very specific points that matter because they are the poles. The poles are, you know, you've got your north and south pole and your east and west poles, and they sort of form that perfect perpendicular right angle points on them, and they are very they're specific points because they create the polarity of that sphere.
I think you're gonna get your mind blown when you get into like the tarot component of this, because effectively every card in a tarot deck can be used to create a like what the Kabbalists call the cube of creation, which is it's fascinating. You'll get there, but then there's also the concept of the three mother letters, Aleph, Mem, and Shin, and within the Sefer Yetzirah, it explains that these establish the XY coordinates for reality. So I'm not saying it is, but it sounds a lot like they're establishing reality by these directional points in a similar way that this paradox does.
Well, right, and so like what it does is you break down the these sets of these points, and you can get what is effectively uh, these six different sets of information that are not technically the whole thing. And what you can do, but then we kind of like glazed over part of what's really important about this, which is sort of the infinite dictionary that has like
Yeah.
all of the possible words in it, and how you can the thing with the infinite dictionary that has all possible words, you can kind of like hyper condense it down, but never really like shrink it, which is where the one of the paradoxes comes in. But continuing on this one here, the what you can do is through a series of clever transformations of the sets of information, you can get out the other sets of information and create duplicate sets of information through these clever transformations on these sets. And when you do that, you end up creating you end up having you start with these sets of information over here in this other sort of void space, right? Perform clever manipulation on them and get the other sets of information without having actually needed them. And so the I think maybe we're not doing this a very good service. So I would definitely watch Vsauce's video on the Banach-Tarski paradox. But the the paradoxical part of it, I think, is that you had these six sets of data and split them out from one object, but then you didn't actually need all six of those sets of data to recreate that object, and could more or less recreate the object from three of its base parts by doing clever actions upon that information. And so, like, how, how are you able to just duplicate this object, the information of this object, by just doing clever actions on it?
Have you gotten to the point in the book where you are where it discusses and studies the Sephiroth?
I am on page 73, which is talking about the ineffable name of God. So no.
Okay. Okay. So I don't want to influence you too much, so I don't want to say much, but from my perspective, what you just described about this paradox matches up insanely well with the the concept of the Sephiroth, even to the point where you have one orb that splits into six that coalesces back into one. Well, it splits into 10 separate ones, and it's different modes or methods of transformation, and but you have the pillars of Jachin and Boaz, so you have two sets of information that are parts of the whole. So it's fascinating to see how some of this stuff is lining up, and but I'm just saying carry this with you as best as you can, like when you get to that part of the book, because I'd love to hear your take on it.
Yeah, and I think it definitely warrants me rewatching the video, and re-understanding truly what it is that's going on with the paradox, as well as the first part with the infinite lexicon, because that's a very interesting and particular part that matters about it because of what is discussed from that lexicon. Like it's the same thing with the other sort of parts that this all bootstraps off of, which is the infinite hotel, and how do you manage to like continue to fit people in the infinite hotel, as well as also like the differences between infinities, which I know will come up as well in all this. But like that's there's definitely a time for us to do the episode specifically on, like, from my orientation, the infinity and the cool things of math, and then also how the Kabbalistic thought would apply to different types of infinity.
Right, but imagine my surprise watching this video that you sent me in, and it's like, yeah, like yeah, like you're describing exactly like what I've been researching for the past however long. But like it's not some, it's not Gandalf or like Aleister Crowley like giving me this information. It's some other fucking bald dude that's not me.
Right, some other set of mathematicians that somehow managed to like describe something that like Jewish scholars were talking about centuries ago.
Yeah, and I'm curious again, is that a synchronicity or is it one thought influencing the other? But then, that gets us into the last part of the command rants where if you look hard enough at anything, you will eventually see everything. So like I like to say that you can find God on the back of your cinnamon toast crunch box. If you follow it down, follow the rabbit hole down far enough, you're getting as much out of that as you do. I'm not going to say that it's as simple, but you can get as much out of that as reading the Bible, as much as you can learning like high level mathematics, as much as you can by reading like dirty anime books. I don't know. Like point being is there's little nuggets of truth in everything. It's just how far do you want to chase that awareness or that observance rabbit hole?
Yeah, do you want to ruin all of your pervert cartoons by being able to kabbalistically analyze why the blue and white panties are the iconic, I guess, pair that your particular waifu wears? Or don't you? Or would you rather not see that rabbit hole?
Yeah. So that's that is the 10 command rants, more or less in a nutshell. Um, this is topics that are going to come up, and I hope we did it justice. I don't know if we did because it's a lot of abstract, but I think that we did a pretty good job at trying to keep it pretty grounded.
Yeah, I mean, like, we're doing the best we can with this, and I think there's there's probably way more that we could go in and talk about and just sort of riff on, but this effectively gets you started. We would obviously highly advise that you read the book. You'd be welcome to read the book along with us, because we're going to be doing a particular outline. We're going to follow a specific set of chapters here. The most specific ones being episode 2, focusing on chapters 3 and 4, the Sephirot Zera, and the Hebrew alphabet. We won't be going into every single letter in the Hebrew alphabet because we would need several episodes, and is likely more specifically, we almost may want to just do a series at that point on the Hebrew alphabet. So the 3 mother and 7 double will be the subject there. Episode 3, we'll talk about chapter 5, the name of God and the Ark of the Covenant, as well as the 4 Kabbalistic worlds and the 4 parts of the soul in chapter 6. We'd have episode 4 specifically talking about the Sephiroth, chapter 7, the Tree of Life, and chapter 8, Kabbalistic Magic and the Tree of Life, with our final episode, chapter 5, getting to touch on Tarot and Angels, with chapter 9 and some of the games that Kabbalists play, and numerology, and the other sort of like, not tricks of the trade, but the tools that you will use to employ and play the games of thought that you will with this way of looking at things in chapter 10. At some point we would obviously do a Tarot and Angels episode that will lend them justice, but for the sake of examining the introductory material, the Chicken Qabala book, we will be only really looking at it from the orientation that he does.
Yeah, and like I'm so excited to get through some of this. But most importantly, I'm glad that we were able to work through the 10 command rants, because I think it at minimum laid the groundwork for Alex and I to have a as best of a concrete middle ground, and we're gonna build on this, and that's always subject to change. But at least now we have a language and like a set of rules to move forward with.
Yeah, I think we're just going to continue to find more and more parallels between, I, I guess, what my world is, which is math, and this other world, which is the other symbology and other descriptions of existence.
Yeah, like I was joking with Alex earlier, saying that like he's a like an elemental mage, and then I'm like an illusion mage. If we were playing D&D or whatever, because Alex is more learned in the definitive finiteness of the universe being numbers. Like, if for nothing else, the only thing that we can prove for real is that 1 + 1 = 2, right? Unless there's something that says that that's you know there could be like a third outcome.
Well, the
But oh
no,
no.
no, there wouldn't be a third outcome. It is that is exactly right. That is a something that we can prove, at least by the. Well, hold on. I don't want to like necessarily say that, but like it's a construct. Math is a construct, but the construct has continued to hold up it, over the course of time, and I think that when you start seeing how well it applies to the Kabbalistic way of thinking, that it can get even stronger roots and pillars to stand on, in terms of what it is allowing us to describe, which is this extremely abstract ideas, which is something that, again, another thought experiment. Try not to think too hard about like what one is versus what it means. Like, you have one of something. You have one cell phone you carry around, uh, but like, houses used to have maybe two phones in them, and like think about two and one, and like, okay, it's one of something, and then when you have two of something, and then those two somethings can be two different somethings, but then just the abstract and ephemeral concept of one and two, and how you were able to reconcile that when you were growing up in math, and just shudder at the just absolute mind bendingness of such a thing.
Like, reality is the more that I read about this, it's just held together by like toothpicks and bubble gum.
Yes.
Um, it's like really, like as we have demonstrated, or Lon Milo DuQuette has demonstrated, there's like a certain level of like we have to accept reality as it is per the faculties, the ability that we can perceive with, and there is, fortunately or unfortunately, an upper limit to that. So working within the confines of what we have is difficult.
Well, and I'd also say that don't be discouraged by that idea that like there is an upper limit to it, and I don't personally think that makes anything pointless in this regard, that there's then that you should use that as your motivation to take a blue pill on this, especially because like ultimately you get to decide what it is that you spend your time doing, but it all does have a point, and the point is that it's yours.
Yeah, that it's just experience. It's just pure experience is what it comes down to. And one of the most beautiful fundamental things of being a human is the ability to have free will, or at least what we think is free will. To be able to project and focus our attention to places that we decide to do that with.
You always have a choice. But I think that would be, a good conclusion point for our episode here. The first episode on Chicken Qabala. The usual applies. Obviously, if you want to send us a like, a subscribe, any of those sorts of things, uh, feel free to also touch us on the internet. Check us out on Twitter or on Instagram. And any final thoughts, Martin?
No, I think that's it. My brain kind of hurts just from going through this, and then like the research. And Alex and I spent, not to belabor the point, but probably 4 or 5 hours the other night just trying to sort through conversations and even how to tackle this and things with which to say. So, uh, I think we're seeing the not the burnout, but the culmination of really putting our brains to the ringer for some of this. And I'm and I'm ready to sign off about
Yeah,
it.
it's going to be an uphill battle, but you listener are taking that uphill battle with us. So feel free, ask questions. We will try to provide what answers we can in terms of what we think the answers might be. But obviously, with a lot of this content, we're finding the answers with you. So what we think is the correct is not there's not really correct when it comes to any of this. It is just well what we might suppose.
Yes, it's the information that we have distilled through the lens that we have at the moment, and that's it can't be any more or less than that. And I know that sounds like a cop out, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. So we'll catch you next time.
Bye, everybody.